Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Liana Braun. I am Director of Expansion Strategy at Cara Collective. And I'm so excited to welcome you this afternoon to the next session of our Beyond the Case series. And today we're going to focus our conversation on our latest case, Reassembling the Workforce, the case of fair chance hiring, which for me, really, there's no better topic for the last day of Fair Chance Month, although we've all agreed in this room that every month should be Fair Chance Month, but it is wonderful to have this intentional space to talk a little bit about what that can look like. So before we dive in, I just want to take a moment recognizing that we're bringing attention to this very important topic, where this sits. Why are we having this conversation? Why is it important? So I want to zoom out to set the stage and ground our conversation in the bigger picture for a moment and remind folks that 1 in 3 working age adults in the United States is impacted by the criminal legal system. I'm going to slow down and say that again because that is a significant number. 1 in 3 working age adults in the United States is impacted by the criminal legal system, which means that as an organization, if you're not figuring out how to tap into this talent pool, you are going to miss out on top talent. At the same time, we know that we have a growing talent gap in this country. And some estimates put us at, by 2030, we're going to have 85 million jobs unfilled. So these are really significant numbers. And again, even though it's one Fair Chance Month, we can start to see this bigger picture unfolding where this is a topic that should matter to all of us. And recognizing that, I'm so lucky to be joined by 2 Fair Chance leaders that can help us start to figure out, well, what does this mean? What does this look like? How can my organization be a fair chance? And where do we even start? So with that, I want to introduce our 2 speakers today. I'm joined by Marcus Sheanshang, President and CEO of JBM Packaging, who's the feature of our case study, as well as Tina Gagliano Mandell, who's the Senior Manager of HR Regulatory Operations at Discover. Now, I know you all are going to have a lot of questions for these folks who have made a lot of progress when it comes to fair chance. So we're going to go ahead and put a Slido in the chat for you. So feel free throughout the conversation to add your questions, and then we'll make sure to leave some space at the end so that we can have a conversation and answer some of those burning questions for you. So with that, let's get started, Marcus and Tina. And really to begin our conversation, I just want to call out that JBM Packaging and Discover are really different kinds of organizations. Different industry. JBM, you're in manufacturing. Discover, many of us know, is a global financial services organization. So to get us started, Marcus, I'm going to start with you, and I want to just hear what fair chance hiring looks like at your organization. So paint a little bit of that backstory for us so we can understand kind of how your company decided to pursue this and why.
Thank you, Liana. Fair chance hiring for us started really from a strategic perspective. We looked at this a few years ago, about 2016, and said we wanted to be a growing business. I think any business owner out there would also understand that you're going to have a lot of the demographics at play. You're going to have a lot of team members retiring over the next few years as well. And just as you mentioned, I think you said by 2030, there's going to be 85 million job openings. So through that process, through that strategic process, we wanted to identify another area where we could kind of tap into a new team member group, and the Fair Chance kind of popped up for us through first through a church that I went through, and they mentioned it, and it kind of tapped our interest, and we pursued it from then. We've got about 145 team members right now, and of which 42 are fair chance, and that's after 7 or 8 years of this program.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. And that number, 145 team members, is so significant. That's why we wanted to feature some of the great work at JBM in the case study, because it starts with a vision, a goal, as you talked about. How can we tap into this talent pool, and well, how do you bring that to life so you actually turn that into hires? So incredible backstory. Thank you, Marcus. Tina, let's hear from you.
Sure. So I think it was around 2017, Discover started really looking at revamping its background check process. And as part of that, one of the things that we needed to be prepared for and that we started looking at was natural flow of talent also includes fair chance hires. So we needed to develop a strategy and a process for the natural workflow. And so that became very much a part of our everyday model in looking at individuals who had criminal justice involvement. And as Discover continues its work in other areas, we've put a lot of focus recently around partnering with communities and wanting to bring community support and additional opportunity and outreach in underrepresented areas. And so one of the things that we were asked was, hey, can we accommodate community support, which might, right, have engagement with other fair chance talent? And the great part about that was it wasn't unique, right? So we already had a model built for it, and it was an opportunity for us to continue expanding that, looking at what other organizations were doing and enhancing it in a way that we were broadening what does fair chance talent include, and how do we make our process even better around that space.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. And what I appreciate is kind of this recognition that there can be multiple ways to go about fair chance hiring. And I think part of it is, you just said, Tina, there's a natural flow of fair chance talent. You heard me talk about the 1 in 3 Americans that are impacted, which means many organizations are already employing individuals from this population. And it's going to be a part of their talent processes and figuring out, well, how do we navigate this? Marcus, you also talked about this intentionality of, we know that there is a talent pool here that's motivated, that is skilled, and we want to bring them in very intentionally. So both are really important ways to think about this work. But I just wanted to start by calling out that there's multiple ways to think about and approach fair chance hiring. One thing, though, in our work with companies at Cara Collective, I think a very normal and natural question we get is, well, what about the risk? So I wanted to spend a little bit of time hearing from both of you about how you're thinking about this. And Marcus, I actually want to quote you because there's an incredibly powerful quote that came out in the case study, in which you said, a lot of people might have biases around folks coming out of prison, and I can say that very confidently because I was one of them. Before the Fair Chance program, if you checked the box that you had a felony background, I promise you, you are not going to get a job at JBM. So that's such an impactful statement to make, Marcus. I'm wondering if you can bring us along and help us understand what changed your mind and got you to this place where now you are hiring and have 145 people on your team.
Yeah, and it's funny looking back and hearing that line. Certainly not something I'm terribly proud of, but if I'm honest, that's where I was back then. And what's been interesting through this process is, when you really better understand, and when I thought about it, when our team thought about it, the troubles that somebody coming out of prison, when they get out, like what all they go through. And if I look at myself, I've got 2 great kids. I've got a wonderful wife. I would want to be the best father, the best husband I could be. And if there are all these impediments for me, to get a job, to provide for them, that would be really challenging. And I honestly, I would probably do some things I wouldn't be very proud of, to make sure I was taking care of my family. So I think that was the biggest change in my mind, as well as our team members, as we were going through this ourselves, a better understanding and maybe appreciating that, a person that made a mistake should not be impacted by that one mistake for the rest of their life. That's a big deal, because from our perspective, it's something that, there's that as they come out of prison, if you can kind of more empathize with where they're coming from, I think you're better able to help prepare your other team members for accepting them into your culture, as well as preparing other programs that can help them be successful too. I'll just go back to the fact too that none of us would want to be judged based upon our worst day. And if we can step back and show a little bit of heart with this, and certainly I'm not saying that our doors are not wide open either. We've got criteria around our fair chance hiring, just to make sure that, we're not ready for all crimes out there. But it is something that, I think as all of our team members learn more about kind of the why behind this, they kind of gathered more interest, and they're more helpful as people are coming on board. I mean, the kindness that our team members that are non-fair chance have shown to our fair chance team members has really been something I've been very proud of. Our second and third shifts are very much, there's a lot more fair chance folks in our second and third shifts, so they almost have their own community in some of those that they can talk through. So it's been a process for us, though. And it didn't happen overnight either. But from our perspective, this has really impacted who we are as a business, and it's certainly changed the direction. We're focusing on areas that we can hire more fair chance team members, so that we can be part of. It's their process, it's their path. But if we can be part of that success, that's something we'd be very proud of as a company.
Yeah, Marcus, and I actually have to commend you, because I know you said that statement, like, looking at it now, maybe it's not something that it's easy to reflect on, that mindset, but it is something we hear time and time again, and something that we know is a natural concern for business leaders and operators that are kind of entrusted with their organization, their resources. So it's helpful to hear from leaders that have made that own transition and how they thought about this. I just want to stay with you for another moment, because right now, Cara Plus is actually part of a fair chance hiring cohort with employers. We're helping them think about their own changes in their organization. And they tell us one of the big areas of opportunity is just figuring out ways to get buy-in across their team. So I'm wondering if you can share even a little bit more about that process of gaining buy-in. I heard you say that just exploring that why your organization is pursuing this is helpful, but any other learnings along the way as you were helping to alleviate the concerns of other members of your team? I'd just be curious to hear a little more.
Sure. There's a lot of companies out there that we know of that started out as a fair chance company. So they were kind of starting out with only a handful of team members, and then the majority of their team members are fair chance. For us, we started out, we were already a functioning business. We already had a full cohort of team members. So as we were trying to expand our team member count, this is the area that, as I mentioned before, that we were pursuing. We met monthly at that time with all three shifts, and we communicated. So it was a lot of different times that, and this was not the first one. We first started out actually trying to recruit high school kids that weren't going to college. That program did not work well for us. I think we spent about 18 months doing that. And on the fair chance side, which we started next, that's something that we did. We weren't trying to operate kind of in the shadows there. We were being very honest with what we were doing and why we were doing it. I think the why was very important. And we gave our team members all the opportunities to ask questions about it. My door's always open. We've got kind of an Ask JBM box where you can ask anonymously. And we had some pretty not great questions asked, but we answered all of them, and some people, I just think, were just a little bit uncomfortable. And it's one of those things that as you answer them, I think it just is with us, myself included, it takes some time to, I'll say, warm up to the idea. But this is something that, during COVID, I had kids, and they were able to work in the plant because I'm the owner. So they were pretty young, but my kids were taught by somebody as they were training on the equipment at ages 12 and 14. They were taught by somebody that was a fair chance team member. And, we don't advertise who's fair chance. And, it's one of those things, people can find that out very quickly using Google or whatnot. But, when people saw that, first of all, I work here every day. My children are working here. I think it was a bit of a loud statement. And nothing's perfect. We've had some issues, but nothing that the hall of horrors that people might think. In the degree of loyalty and just really, we've had some people leave and gone on to better things, and how appreciative they are of the Fair Chance program is really neat. And it's something that's guiding the direction and purpose of our business.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Marcus. That's helpful to understand that this is a process in all the different ways you are thinking about bringing your team along. Tina, I want to go to you because, again, as we started, we talked about Discover. Is it different kind of operation, financial services, global. So I'm wondering if you can help us kind of reconcile this idea of risk and fair chance hiring when you think about that context of financial services and what you're doing at Discover.
Sure. Thanks, Leanna. I think one of the critical things, and I'm going to kind of pull on Marcus's statement there too, right? Where he said, he's not very proud, but it used to be, if you check that box that you have this history, you won't be considered. And it's important to remember that risk isn't a checked box. Risk is so much more than that. Risk is an assessment. It's multiple factors. It's multiple criteria. And that's why we see it continually changing in the legal and the regulatory landscape, because there is this recognition and acknowledgement that one moment in your life is not and should not dictate your entire future. And that's how we try to think about risk. We look at it not from the singular perspective of I have criminal justice involvement, but what else is in my life? What are the additional rehabilitative factors, right, that can be considered? And what was going on that might have led to the incident to begin with, right? We all know our justice system is an imperfect system. We all know individuals go to court, they listen to their attorneys, they follow recommendations because they're looking at what all potential consequences are, right? Those are relevant factors for determining what is the risk that you're actually looking at, what was going on in that person's life. So I think it's important that we remember that risk is not just about, I have criminal justice involvement. It's all of that coupled together, because that's what's truly going on, right? That's the snapshot. That's the picture where you're going to be able to look at those pieces and build the story around, is there really risk to my personnel? Is there risk to my organization? Or is it really not what it appears to be on paper? Because every situation is unique. No one's criminal history is the same as another person's criminal history, regardless of what it looks like on paper. So I think those are really important things to take into consideration. I mean, I'll give you the example, right? You can have two co-defendants, same exact incident, right? Same criminal charges, same disposition in court. But if you actually look at the nature of the conduct, the role those two people played, what's going on in their lives at that time, what they've done since may be very different. And that is what we should be looking at. That's where we should be focusing our assessment, not just on, is there criminal justice involvement?
Yeah. Yeah, please, Marcus.
Just to that point, that's a great point, Tina. We had a situation where one of our criteria was we weren't ready to accept anybody that has committed murder. And they came back to me and said, well, we've got this situation. Let's talk about it. And Tina, just like you said, was a 50-year-old man who committed a murder at age 15 or 16, very young. He'd been in the system for that long, 35-ish years or whatnot. He was a saint of a guy. He obviously made a terrible mistake. There was all kinds of, nobody really knew what happened at that point that many years ago, but a great guy, a great team member. And it's kind of looking and understanding better what the current situations were. So I agree wholeheartedly with you.
Mm-hmm. And what I'm hearing is this is nuanced. It's challenging. I think what might even be surprising to some employers on this call, Tina, I know you've seen this firsthand, but you take any business leader who doesn't have the experience you have, Tina, they may not understand if they're looking at someone's kind of what was pulled, the results of a background check. What does it actually mean? And sometimes we've also seen at Cara that the individuals themselves don't understand all the convictions. They haven't had that opportunity to fully understand even their own backgrounds and records. So it's much more nuanced. And to that end, Tina, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about Discover's philosophy around your background check process and how you think about moving from this idea of excluding people to something different. So I would love to hear a little bit more about where this perspective has taken you all.
Sure. And I love that question, Liana. So I think where I want to start in responding is our philosophy at Discover is it's focused on the timing of the background check. So when you think about it, right, we adhere to all the ban the box laws. By the time someone actually reaches the background check stage of the process, they've been qualified for the position. They've gone up against heavy competition, right, for placement in this role. They've interviewed and they've been selected. So we look at our role in the background check process not as trying to keep someone out of the business, but rather this is who the hiring manager has identified as their most qualified candidate. So rather than trying to prevent someone from getting into the organization, we want to look at how do we get them through our process? What are the concerns that we need to address in order to feel comfortable with that movement? And admittedly, there are times where we can't get there, right? As Marcus said, Brett, there's not an open door policy, anything and everything, but there is an assessment process. And essentially, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to see if we can qualify those individuals and alleviate the concerns that certain incidents in their background may bring to light. So that's really our philosophy and our approach. The other piece that I would be remiss if I left out is, you said it, Liana, we're a financial services industry. So we're a heavily regulated industry, and there are very specific prohibitions around what kind of criminal offenses can you have and still be allowed to work at a financial institution. So part of our journey was developing a process around those regulations and looking at what does the regulation really say? Because as we all know, laws are nuanced. Laws have exceptions. Laws have, in this case, for financial industry, now there's also exemptions and exceptions. So we don't stop our process by just looking at, oh, is it a prohibition? We go the extra mile to say, does an exception exist? Does an exemption exist? And if they don't, what can this person do in order to remove that barrier? And so that's what we're looking for. We're having long conversations with individuals for the general assessment process, right? To figure out what was the incident, what are the concerns, what do we need to be aware of? We're trying to give guidance because most individuals who have criminal justice involvement may not understand, well, this is exactly what all that legal jargon meant when you were in court. If we need to see documentation, I can send somebody to the courthouse, right? But do I need their entire court file? Probably not. I probably need specific documents. They need guidance, right? They don't know what it is we're looking for or what we're trying to determine. So we try to ensure that when we have conversations with our candidates, we're giving them the right legal language. Go talk to this court, speak with this clerk, ask for this document, right? Because we don't want to send somebody on a journey that just leads to more journey, more asks, more new requests. Right? When you think about the experience somebody has already gone through in order to get to this stage, or how many times they've been turned down before this new opportunity where they've actually been selected, right? We take that into consideration with the experience. We want them to have the best possible experience on something that is very difficult to begin with, rehashing some of the worst moments in your life. So how do we make it easier? How do we make it better? How do we prepare them for what we're actually in need of in order to move forward to the next phase? So we pay attention to all those things. We give them, the information that they need to try to be successful.
Tina, whenever I hear you speak to this, I'm so excited because this is a departure from how many companies are thinking about this. I have one more follow-up question here, but I cannot continue without calling out something specific you said around the regulatory piece. So oftentimes when we talk to employers, that's the end of the conversation. We're a regulated industry. We cannot pursue fair chance hiring. But what I'm hearing you saying is that is important. That is relevant. Those things are in place for a reason, and we can dig further. That is an opportunity that I see over and over again. Yes, this is very nuanced and complex, so it takes time to actually figure out how all of these pieces come together, but it is possible. And as we've talked about, to reach this talent pool, it is worth that investment. So I appreciate you naming that, Tina. I have one more follow-up question, just to better understand what this looks like at Discover. And then Marcus, don't worry, I'm going to come over to you next. Tina, the last thing I wanted to ask is, how do you staff this kind of operation? Because I hear you talk about the intentionality. So I want to know what this looks like. How do you make that possible at an organization like Discover? And even what are the kinds of people that you want to bring in to be doing this work? What do you look for in terms of qualities of the team that you're running?
Great questions. So I have a fantastic team of dedicated individuals who are trained and skilled in how to review these documents and learn this legal jargon and this terminology. So I have a team of 7 individuals who work under me and basically bring this process to life. And we've got a variety of backgrounds from law enforcement to prior investigation work to psychology degrees, right? It's variable because it's a skill to read through somebody's history. It's a skill to look at and fact gather and try to make determinations about what is the big picture and build out that basically that true risk assessment, not just risk based on one criteria. So that's what we look at in terms of staffing and the qualifications. You heard me mention before that the candidate experience is also something that's critical in our space. So it's that conversational skill that goes such a long way in putting someone at ease around talking about these very difficult moments in our lives. It's hard to get somebody to open up, but it's critical, right, for us to gather the information that's necessary. And so that's one of the things that definitely we look at in the program being successful is building that rapport with every candidate who is coming through and making sure they understand, right? Confidentiality, critical piece to success as well. Marcus said, on their side, they don't broadcast who's your fair chance talent. We certainly don't. So it's a confidential, secure process. And sometimes it becomes an intimate conversation, but that's where we see the greatest amount of success, right? Because then we get back to our philosophy. This is about helping people through the process, helping them understand why information might be needed rather than it being, we want you to jump through these hoops in order for you to get to the next stage.
Yeah, Tina, that's helpful to bring us full circle and to understand that relationship between the vision of kind of what impact do we want to have on this talent pool and how does that translate into the operations and how we staff this team. So with that, Marcus, I want to go over to you because this is, again, one of the big areas where we get so many questions. We talk to companies, they say, yes, I want to reach this talent pool, but how do I do that? It's where the rubber hits the road. That's what's tricky. So help us to understand what that looks like. And specifically, I want to know, as you were intentionally bringing in this talent pool, what were some of the most important pieces of that Fair Chance program that needed to be in place for it to be successful?
Great question. There's a lot of like the how-tos to even get something like this started. So when we first initiated our Fair Chance program, we had an outsourced change coach, I'll call her, who kind of manned all three shifts, which was pretty challenging. And that was for us something we were kind of, I'll say, trying to ease into this. Um, we found that we didn't really get the traction with our program until we hired that person on as a full-time team member. And now we've got one kind of our head change coach, and we've got one person that works for that lady, and they support all three shifts. And it really, I compare them. I always call them Switzerland. Their conversations are safe with them. They can have very open conversations with them on a very regular basis. They actually, our Fair Chance team members have to meet weekly with our change coaches. And our change coaches are available for all of our team members too, Fair Chance and non-Fair Chance. But for our Fair Chance team members, where they can be kind of struggling with, there's a lot of different things that as they're getting out that there are struggles with. Namely, first get a job, but then do you have transportation? Do you have housing? Are you having legal problems? Are you trying to see your kids? Stuff like that. A lot of times they're coming out and they're in a halfway house, which is the halfway houses are frankly worse than the prisons. And so working through that 3 or 6 month period on parole, how does that work? So that change coach allows for an open conversation. And I think it kind of gets stuff off their chest, that type of thing too. So that's been very, very helpful for us. I meet regularly at 60 Days. I meet with all new team members, and it's always really great to hear their feedback on Jackie, I love Allison, all these different things that they have kind of established really great rapport with them, and they have a confidant at JBM. I'll also say too, which has been very learning for us. We're always trying to figure things out for ourselves, and we're gonna do it all ourselves. And what we've learned over probably the first 3 or 4 years of the program there's a number of different groups out in our area, in the Cincinnati area, that are helping support people coming out of prison too. So we've got a great group called Wheels, and they were part of the church that I go to. They kind of split off on their own, but we financially support Wheels, and Wheels helps to get our team members a kind of a transitional car. And so we've been part of giving away 50 cars, 50 cars to our team members. So again, these are cars that are probably 3 to 5 years left in their life, but it helps them kind of establish a semblance of normalcy in their life. We help them find felon-friendly housing as well. That can be a little bit of a complicated process too. There's great other groups here that have helped do. A group called CityLink helped us develop our program better. And I just strongly encourage anybody who's really considering this to talk to other companies that have done a Fair Chance program. I'd be remiss if I didn't say Nehemiah Manufacturing. They were one of the original ones in the Cincinnati area that helped us, and they've helped kind of pay it forward. And I know JBM wants to pay it forward too. So I would say don't go cowboy. Try to figure this out with other people. Learn from our mistakes. There's been plenty, but learn on ours. And we're an open book. We want other companies to start these programs because we think it's so important to kind of helping to break generational poverty, which is really what a lot of this is too. From that point, a kid that his parents, their parents are one or two were in prison, the likelihood of them being going to prison as well is extremely high. So when you can help them reestablish themselves as the mother and father, it really does help do a small part of breaking the generational poverty too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Marcus, that's an incredible reminder of, when you do this work, you have opportunities to make impact in different ways. First and foremost, we talked about to your business, what impact does that have, but also how does that change lives in your community? One other reminder, you talked about just talk to other people that have done this work, learn from them, read the case study that JBM did, right? I'm going to remind folks to look into the details there, some of the things Marcus mentioned. Just to kind of call out a few things that stuck out from what you said, Marcus, was number one, the resources, the benefits. This is incredible. I think this is the only company, JBM, that I've heard that has found a way to deal with transportation so directly and has made that investment, helping their employees find cars. I've never heard that before. And I think that just shows this opportunity for creativity. Again, instead of saying, this is a barrier to transportation, that's the end of the conversation. You really got creative to figure out, well, what can we do? And we don't have to do it alone. So bringing in those outside benefits, having coaching to help people navigate those things, those are two really critical pieces I'm hearing. The last thing I'm wondering about, maybe you can fill in some gaps for us, is just how did you find this talent pool? You talked about having this need for talent. You were trying to figure out, where are opportunities to reach new groups of talent. So tell us a little bit more about how you just found these individuals.
Yeah, so this is a fun story too, because Amanda Hall, who is our talent acquisition leader, she herself is Fair Chance, and she started out as an operator, quickly moved to a trainer, and now she's in our HR department. So we've developed a really great rapport with the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections. They have been a great organization. They say they're very honest. They say we're the government, so there's a lot of bureaucracy here, but they want these folks to be successful when they get out too. So Amanda regularly works with individual prisons, and we develop rapport there. Tina, as you were saying too, it's like, how do you know who these folks are? We meet with them very regularly. When you're sitting there saying like, okay, I get out in September, so when we're up at Dayton Correctional Institute, we're meeting with them, and hey, how's it going? Anything, just kind of, developing rapport and really knowing who they are as a person, and kind of figuring out, because not everybody coming out is a fit regardless. They just might not be a fit for our company for what we're doing. So that's helpful for both parties. So, but we've got a relationship with probably 6 or 7 different prisons, a number of the different halfway houses too, that we have, regular meetings with, that we know kind of who they have coming out, when they have coming out, so that we can be ready for them, and know who's coming in the door too, because we've spent a lot of time doing it, because it does take time. This isn't something, I've talked with the companies too, and they said, we hired two people coming out of prison and it didn't work. You need to have, our opinion, you need to have this infrastructure in place for it to be successful, and it costs money. Let's not be silly. This is not something that, you can just expect this to just happen on its own. There's investment on our part. We're happy to make that investment, just to be clear. Because I'll say, as I mentioned before, 145 team members, 42 are Fair Chance. I don't know where we would be right now without our Fair Chance program. We would be at 100 team members, and we all know it's very hard finding people right now. We would probably be working our team members, into the ground on overtime and everything else. So, and it's hard to, I'm a finance guy. I love to know what the numbers are. And it's hard to put this on there because there's a lot of qualitative aspects to it. But I know you can look at this just rationally, and you understand that the investment certainly does pay for itself, because we are in an ability to grow because of our Fair Chance team members.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Marcus, these are, again, I think just bring us back to the why, where we started, and understanding how this does contribute to the businesses. So helpful. I think just one more tactical question I have for both of you, and you already started to talk about this, Marcus, is just knowing that you cannot, maybe should not, try to solve this all on your own. Sometimes it does make sense to do things in-house when it comes to your Fair Chance efforts, and sometimes it makes sense to outsource or rely on partners. So we'd love to hear from both of you on how you made that decision of what do we do, what do we outsource. So Marcus, I want to stay with you, and then Tina, we'll hear what that looks like at Discover.
Well, we did look at in doing a lot of things ourselves, and frankly, whether it was buying rental property, whether it was buying, again, no idea is a bad idea except for this one. And we were going to buy cars, and we were going to let team members use them. Our lawyers like, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard of. So there are certain things that you can kind of vet out there, and I think just the openness of understanding that you don't need to put this all on yourself, and get to know your community, get to know the people in your community. Because a lot of these things, it's really helpful because if we can work with some of our community partners, it actually strengthens them as well. And we can certainly support them in maybe other ways that they need support. But just having that regularity there, broadening this fair chance network, does help them, in whatever their individual pursuits are too. So there's a lot to it, and I think it's, when it kind of like the proverbial stay in your lane, focus on what you're good at, and help those other companies and other groups be successful in their respective lanes too. Made a lot of sense for us.
Mhm. Tina, I want to go over to you. How do you think about this? What do you do? In a lot of ways, you have invested in that team. We heard you have a team of 7 doing what other companies outsource to a company. So tell us a little bit more about why you made that decision.
Yeah, as Marcus and as you just said, Leanna, it is an investment, right? There's no if, ands, or buts about that. And what Discover invested in was the assessment process. Candidly, you hear a lot of individuals in the background check world talk about matrices, and you hear them talk about green light matrices and red light matrices, and this is what gets through and this is what doesn't. And as an organization, between legislative restrictions on those approaches and what that looks like in terms of pushing away qualified talent, we went the opposite way. And we invested in really doing an assessment process that aligns with legal requirements and looks at the factors that should be considered in all instances, instead of building a chart that says this is what passes or this is what doesn't. So that's what we brought in house. And we took that a step further and said, hey, for individuals who've been involved in the system, right? I love this program that JBM has with cars, right? Because transportation is one of the primary things that we frequently encounter with criminal justice involved individuals. They don't have access to transportation. So the other thing that we discussed and did was we said, okay, well, what can we gather on our own? How many court resources are now available electronically? How many processes exist to obtain records on our own? Where can we step in and assist with that process? So those are also pieces of the puzzle, right, in terms of building out an effective program. So we took that into consideration. There are certain pieces that we can't do, right? There are sometimes limitations and restrictions. If consent from the FDIC is a requirement, we can't do those things on someone else's behalf. But what we can do is give them the information on what to do, how to do it, at least how to start it, right? So that they don't feel like they're just constantly coming up against barriers and that's the end. There's no alternative, because in most instances, there's always at least a second path. It's a matter of, can you identify it? Can you figure it out? Is it worth taking the steps to go down that next journey, that next road? So those are the kinds of things that we look at in terms of what should stay in-house, what should not be, or what's not worth the investment. I think the other thing, Leanna, if I can expand, that I just really want to touch on is programs like what JBM have designed, right? And the wraparound services that you see successful organizations implement. One of the key things that when we talk with like our internal partners who handle those pieces is to bear in mind that those services, maybe you're designing them with fair chance talent in mind, but they're actually benefits for your entire organization. And it's great when you're doing things like combating poverty or wanting to bring community assistance, right? Fair chance talent is a natural pipeline, but there are other individuals who are in those pools that don't necessarily have criminal justice involvement. And so what you're doing is you're building a community support network. You're building an approach. You're building tools and resources for the collective good, And that can enhance the culture of the company and continue to build loyalty across the entire population.
Yeah, Tina, that's such an important message, and I'm glad you took some time to expand on that, because we forget that. We can get so into the details of what it means to support this population, and we forget the impact that can have across the organization. So we're about to open it up to our Q&A. We have one more quick question I just want your take on. But before I ask it, this is your last chance, anyone listening in, to put your question in the Slido or to upvote any questions that you want to hear answered. So do that now while we close out this part of the conversation. So Marcus and Tina, my last question for you. We have all heard the amount of experience you all have, all the learning that must have happened, and some of the things you lifted up for us. So looking back, I would love to just maybe hear one or two things that you've learned and maybe you wish you would have known from the beginning now that you're looking back. So Marcus, let's start with you.
I'll say two things. One that we didn't really consider, and this has been a fantastic, kind of ancillary benefit from the Fair Chance program, is I feel that we've been able to retain our better non-fair chance team members because they love to be part of a company that is trying to do something that's helping the community and helping a group of people that are in a tough part of their life. I know that there have been a number of different people that have been with us for a long time, and I feel like they've just got a different connection now with the business since the Fair Chance program started. And I'd say two, from a manufacturer's perspective, we've got a lot of different levels of our jobs here. You need to have a strategy for the coming years, just with where demographics are. You need to have a hiring strategy. And to me, this is a solution to the problem. It's not, there are other ones out there, but this is something where you can really wrap your head around and say, it's very logical. If you can do the different parts of this and put the program in place to be supportive and help people be successful, you're going to be able to tap into a great network of people that are very loyal, that frankly, as soon as you have a kind of a group of Fair Chance team members, it almost, they build their own community in certain respects that they can kind of build and talk with each other too, and be very supportive of each other too. So again, it's a solution to the coming problem from a hiring perspective. You just sort of look at it from a business perspective.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcus. How about you, Tina? Any learnings from this experience?
I think the most critical learning in our journey has been, this doesn't start and stop in one place. This is an organizational decision, and it requires buy-in and participation from a lot of different teams. So it's really important that if you're going to take the journey and decide Fair Chance hiring is something that you're interested in, that you want to pursue, it can't just be one person. And we continue to learn every day. How do we make more enhancements? How do we continue to improve? Who else should we tap into in the organization to continue to build this out? Because that's where you get the longevity, right? It's not just about, can Fair Chance talent get through the door? It's about, how are we recruiting that Fair Chance talent? How are we driving the interest? How are we letting them know regulatory barriers can be crossed, right? And then once they're through the door, what additional services are we continuing to offer? What support, what resources do we have to give? And candidly, right, I would think I was naive in the very beginning around, we're already set up, right? We know how to handle this. And when you really look at what this encompasses, it's so much more than one piece. And building those partnerships and bringing others in your organization along for the journey, that's your key to success.
Yep. Thank you, Tina. It's such an incredible reminder. And I looking at some of the questions coming from the audience, we're seeing questions that span the organization. But one clear trend is there's a lot of tactical questions because they know they got some people with experience in the room. So the first question from the audience I want to ask is, How have you adjusted your recruitment procedures to encourage fair chance candidates to apply?
I can dive in. So it's not my specific area. However, what I can say is that our recruitment team they do a lot of partnership with community-based organizations, right? They want to put the message out that there is opportunity here and please consider us. We've also built out on our actual website our background check philosophy so that we're clear and transparent with our candidates about what is the background check process consist of, and that we'll consider all talent, right? Our big line is, there's no automatic disqualifier. So consider us. If there's a role that's of interest, don't self-select out.
And I'd say by far the vast majority, as soon as we're out there, I'd love to say there's more fair chance companies out there. There really aren't as many as we'd want there to be. Develop the relationships with the prisons, the halfway houses. We don't intentionally do this, but this is just the way it's happening. The vast majority of all of our new team members are fair chance. So that pipeline, kind of like once it starts to flow, it's pretty readily available. So we're not actively doing it; it's just kind of coming to us now.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, that's exciting place to be at this point. One thing I'll call out, Marcus, because I also want, and Cara also wants, more fair chance employers. Hearing you talk about creating relationships with prisons, people that are coming out, they're returning to the community. Not all organizations are going to be there yet. So I also just want to mention that there are luckily a variety of organizations that are working with people that have a little bit more time in the community. We know background check processes can go farther back. And of course, we always encourage companies, as Tina has called out, to really work to understand what the risk is. But we know that can look different for every organization. So it's one thing that came to mind for me. Our next question, Tina, is maybe starting with Discover. So Discover is a large business and is able to have a Department of Justice involved research. How can smaller businesses tap into their resources?
It's a great question. For smaller businesses where you're not able to, build out a large team, I think that's one of the things that you consider in terms of the skill of the individual or individuals that you employ in this space. I'll just be transparent. I'm an attorney. And prior to doing this work, I was a criminal defense attorney. So having that background, that knowledge, that experience, right, coming in, I already know what I'm looking at in terms of most documentation to be able to pick up and run with it. So if you're a smaller organization and you can't do a large investment across many people, I would say focus on what is the background and history of the people that you are going to employ in that space, because they may bring a skill set that gets you there with maybe a higher dollar amount in terms of the one employee or the couple of employees. But success in terms of what they're able to do and access to information and level of comprehension, skill, et cetera. So I would say focus on that piece rather than does it have to be a large team when you're a small organization.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Tina. That's a great reminder. Next question. Actually, you both brought this up. So maybe, Marcus, we'll start with you. Was how do you take steps to protect the privacy of your fair chance hires? Recognizing it sounds like it's both top of mind for both of you, but it's not always easy. So curious what steps or protections you all have been thinking about or have in place around that. And Marcus, let's start with you.
Yeah, there's not much of a stigma here anymore to be fair chance. And as I said earlier, unfortunately, you can Google somebody's name and find out pretty quickly. So we don't go out of our, we certainly don't advertise who's fair chance. That's certainly not what we're trying to do. But it is, I'll say you can almost reach a critical mass period to where once you're over that, like for us to hire a new Fair Chance team member is a non-issue. So there's not much protection needed in that situation. So I don't know if I've got a very good answer for your question.
But I will to say, Marcus, I think it's telling to just talk about the culture. There's a culture piece of it that is so important, as you named, and what does that look like for your organization? And so kind of balancing a few of those things that you're mentioning. But Tina.
And I think it's pretty neat that it's gotten to that point too. So yeah.
Yeah, I think what I want to call out with respect to that question is just be careful that you're not equating criminal history with requiring protection, right? We don't advertise, we don't disclose who our Fair Chance talent is, and criminal justice involvement can run the gambit, right? We can be talking about small minor offenses or very serious offenses. Things like security, protection, those pieces that relate maybe to the nature of an incident, that's part of our risk assessment, right? So I would just say be careful that you're not equating those two terms, because criminal justice involvement does not necessarily mean, oh, I have to protect my employees or protect somebody because I've hired Fair Chance talent.
Mm-hmm. So looking at the time, I think we may have one more question we can get to. And since I'm the facilitator, I am blessed with the privilege of being able to choose which one to get to. And I want to talk about internal promotions because, you know, we talk about Fair Chance hiring and it sounds like maybe it's bringing people in the first time, but then where do we go from there? What is the opportunity to grow and recognize the potential of this talent? So I know, Marcus, maybe I'll send this to you first because there have been those promotions at JBM for this talent pool. So tell us a little bit about what that journey has looked like in terms of advancement for this group.
That's probably one of the most fun areas to talk about for us because there truly is no ceiling to where you could be regardless of fair chance or non-fair chance. So a good example again is Amanda. I mean, she started out in our entry-level role and has quickly progressed to a great role within our HR department. Our second shift manager, our second shift operator lead are both fair chance. So all these different things, I think that really does help people that are coming into the program understand that there's room for advancement. We obviously push in-house advances as much as we can, and it's something we celebrate.
Yeah, thank you. That's exciting, Marcus. And I think luckily we're seeing many organizations just say, yes, that there is no ceiling. We want to see people continue to grow. And we know that highly motivated individuals that want to stay with an organization that's invested in them. So with that, I just want to give you all the chance to maybe share a final word, something to leave this group with. So maybe in like 30 seconds or less, would love to hear your final thoughts for this group. And Marcus, I'll stay with you.
I just would encourage you to consider a fair chance program. I'd encourage you to reach out to other companies that do have fair chance programs and just learn more about it. It's a very gratifying program to have here, and frankly, I think it'll make you a better person.
Thanks, Marcus. How about you, Tina?
I just want everybody to really understand it's a worthwhile journey. It takes time, it takes investment, it takes education, but in the long run, there's so much benefit to it that it's worth making the time for it and not putting it off, right? We all have a tendency to do that. Oh, it's not convenient for me to start this right now. Oh, that's something that I'm going to look to in the future. Don't wait, because Liana, you gave the stats at the beginning, right? 1 in 3. It's going to impact your organization and it's going to impact you sooner rather than later. So start to prepare now.
Yeah. What a great thought to leave us on, Tina. And the one thing I'll leave you all with is you are not alone. We have 2 leaders that have shared their experience. They want to share their experiences with you. We at Cara Plus also want to be a thought partner and resource to you in this journey. One way we're doing that is to continue to find ways to share the stories of organizations doing this. So we'll share in the chat again this case study and links to some future case studies where you can continue to learn some of those best practices. We also are part of a Fair Chance cohort with the Corporate Coalition of Chicago and the Chicagoland Workforce Funder Alliance to help companies that want to go along this journey. So feel free to reach out to me if you want to learn more and start that journey today. And then lastly, follow us on LinkedIn because we want to continue to share the resources to not only tap into this talent pool, but to the many untapped talent pools that can help you continue to reach your own business goals and get to the impact you want to see for your company and for yourselves. So with that, I want to thank you, Marcus and Tina, for being here with us today. Very, very excited to partner with you both and grateful for all you're doing in this work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.